talk about fintech, and given that I'm the fintech director here at the bank, it would be a bit of an omission for me to fail to talk about it. So should we start with a poll? In what area do you think fintech has the most potential? So the poll is open. I'm interested to see what everybody has to say. Just let a few results come in. Definitely an area of quite close interest. So we're interested in whether people think that fintech is most useful for helping businesses and people transfer money more effectively, whether it's most useful for helping to keep money safe, whether its best application is helping people borrow, save and invest, or whether actually what fintech is really offering us is benefits for financial inclusion. So if we just close the poll there, then pretty even spread. Reehana, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm actually a little surprised to see the increasing financial inclusion still tops the other ones, given that in the UK, actually, we think financial inclusion probably impacts around 2% of the population, if I've got my figures right. And actually, many of them, it's their choice not to have a bank account, for example. What do you think?
So I think there's a big distinction between access to bank accounts and true financial inclusion. So you're quite right that the unbanked in the UK is a small proportion of our population, but one that we should have a very close kind of eye to how we can help them access banking services. But I think there's a much broader sense of inclusion in the UK, particularly around the fact that people aren't saving enough for their retirement. Households typically have, in some cases, some low financial resilience in some pockets. Typically, households perhaps don't have as much savings as they might like. And also, people sometimes struggle to access a kind of variety of financial products, things like insurance, etc. So I think it's not just about access to bank accounts. I think it's about making sure that people's broad financial needs are met, and in particular, making sure that those who have perhaps been underserved by the financial system are truly having their needs met in a way which is kind of accessible and inclusive for them. So I think it's really good, actually, that people think that fintech is making a difference to financial inclusion and really helping to meet people's needs, because there are some really significant unfulfilled needs in the UK at the moment. Varun, what do you think about those results?
Yeah, I think I agree a lot with what you said, Tom. We talked a lot about transferring money effectively, and that's clearly a place where fintech has already started disrupting, as people say, the financial system, and it's delivering a better user experience, and that's where fintech seems to be able to help so far. But I expect that over the next few years, that kind of disruption will continue to travel up the banking chain, the financial services value chain, and we will see more and more services offered right across the spectrum. So saving, borrowing, investing will become the purview of all the fintechs in the next few years.
So on your screens, you can see what the Bank of England is doing to try and support a flourishing fintech scene, which helps meet people's needs. The first thing I'd say is financial technology isn't new. An ATM, a cash machine, are examples of financial technology, which has been with us for a number of decades. But I think most people would say that the pace of innovation and the use of technology has probably really picked up in recent years, seeing lots of new innovations, many of them really trying to target problems, trying to make our financial lives easier, smoother, more inclusive, and that's always a good thing. I find that most times if I go into a restaurant or a cafe, I usually see a sea of pretty bright coloured debit cards, and often those come with things like apps which help people budget or invest. I recently managed to lose my bank card and found that actually it was really straightforward to just go into the app, talk to a chatbot, and the card was with me basically the day after. So you can see all of these things which are really coming through and making it very easy now to interact with financial services, which is a really positive thing that fintech is doing. So lots of really exciting innovations and a fast-moving sector that's having a positive impact on people's lives. To be slightly gloomier, I'm a central banker, as is Varun and Reehana, and we're kind of trained to be warriors, and we need to make sure that the financial system is safe and you can rely on the financial services which you depend on. So we are really focused on risk, and innovation brings lots of very positive things, new services, better customized products, more financial inclusion, but it can also bring risks and things which we need to worry about going wrong. And what we have to do as regulators is make sure that we're balancing the benefits of innovation, the benefits of things like fintech with proper control and management of risks. And that is why, as you can see on screen, what we did at Bank of England is try and be a platform for safe and sustainable innovation, which tries to capture the benefits whilst dealing with the risks. We also are very interested in trying to support competition. Competition brings choice, it brings diversity, that makes things better for customers, and also makes the system more resilient because we're less dependent on a small number of critical financial services providers. So in the bank, we've done a number of things. One side, we are rebuilding the high-value payment system. If you make any kind of payment, it probably crosses through the Bank of England. It processes about £650 billion a day. And we've done a bunch of things, which you can see on screen, to help innovative companies, including fintechs, have access to that system, benefit from the same sort of access that the big banks have. So we've allowed innovative companies, particularly payment firms, after careful consideration and with due safeguards, to access the high-value payment system in exactly the same way that the big banks do. And we've also looked at whether the system could plug and play or interact with distributed ledger, blockchain business models, which may emerge in the future. So we're not going to build the system on distributed ledger, but we very much want the system to be able to talk to distributed ledger business models. We've also thought really carefully about how we regulate the system and how we give positive conditions for fintech to make a difference whilst keeping the system safe. There was a question about competition earlier and about current accounts. We're really proud of the fact that since 2013, we, working together with the FCA, have really managed to open up the UK banking sector to competition. So the slide you've got is actually already slightly out of date. So actually, over the last couple of days, there's now 46 new bank licenses granted since 2013. That compares really positively to some of our international peers and is really allowing fintechs to enter, allowing challenger banks to enter, and to start to shake up the sector and offer some really positive competition. We also thought very carefully about how to regulate for the future with things which are coming through. So we had the Crypto Asset Task Force, which was the Treasury, the Bank of England, and the Financial Conduct Authority. And in that task force, we looked at things like Bitcoin and other crypto assets and said, what are the risks to UK customers? What sorts of things should we do to make sure the UK system is safe? And what's a proportionate way to regulate to make sure that we're keeping the system safe whilst not stifling innovation? So I think that's probably enough on fintech. And if you guys want to pick some questions.
Yeah, I've got some good questions here. So let's start with this one, going back to what we talked about earlier, financial inclusion. And the question is about financial inclusion in the UK context. Is that financial inclusion in the UK context is that remittances to developing countries from the UK, and the problem being that people receiving that money may not have bank accounts. So it's a clarification question asking what we mean by inclusion.
So I think what we mean by inclusion is making sure that people can access the financial services that they need to go about investing in their future, undertaking their day-to-day financial lives, paying for things, keeping their money safe, insuring themselves against risks, and making sure they've got the right type of access to those services and that they have a choice around those services. Now, there will always be situations in which perhaps overseas, UK institutions or UK customers are having to deal with people who perhaps in foreign countries where the question around financial inclusion is a much darker question around access to basic financial services like bank accounts. And we think there's some really interesting questions there about how things like cross-border payments work, which really need some international attention to them because the Bank of England alone can't solve those questions. But we've done lots of work through things like the Financial Stability Board on questions like access to remittances, access to correspondent banking. So the UK, as a leading financial centre, a global financial centre, and the Bank of England is a kind of global central bank, we want to be active on the international stage, are very interested in those sorts of questions and collaborating with our peers to try and help.
So I've got another question here about open banking. So I'll take this one, and then there's a couple more handovers to Tom and Reehana. So the questions on open banking, one says, what's the bank's view on open banking given the adoption rates over the past 10 to 12 months? 12 to 18 months, and the second question was about what we think the future of open banking is in the UK. So I think the first thing we would say is that the principles of open banking are really valuable, and the Bank of England is really supportive of the initiative. We don't think that the 10 to 12, the experience, the adoption rate so far are really indicative of how this will develop over the future. At the end of the day, this period of the past year and a half has been about firms getting the systems up in place and learning and delivering a better service. So we think adoption rates will rise in the future as the service proposition improves. We're not disheartened by where it's got to so far, and as I say, the bank's really supportive. Now, what we talked about in the SME finance section was really, I guess, our view of where open banking could go. And when you think about what the government is doing with their smart data review and the Treasury and FCA with their open finance, it's really about taking those ideas further and seeing how a system could develop if all these data could move around using APIs. And that's the vision we portrayed. So we think open banking is just the beginning of a much richer system of data transfer with the permissions granted by the user. There's a clarification question as well. I'll ask this to Tom. He talked about 46 banking licenses. The question is, was that in the last year, or what time frame was that 46 banking licenses?
That's since 2013.
Okay, Tom, another question here. A string of these actually are similar ones. Is foreign central bank digital currency seen or recognised as an economic threat?
Well, there's not really any operating central bank digital currencies out there at the moment. There've been one or two which have been sort of pilots or small-scale experiments, one of which didn't go particularly well. So I don't think it's seen as an economic threat yet. I think we probably see it more as an economic opportunity, actually. So we're not actively thinking about issuing one in the UK anytime soon, but we definitely think that the time's come to really step up our exploration of this. So I see central bank digital currency probably a bit more in the opportunity than threat territory at the moment.
Okay, I'm going to read out one final question, I think. Is that okay with you guys? Does your approach to stability risk overemphasize the stability of incumbents versus innovators?
It's a really good question, and it's important we get this right. So as Tom talked about, innovation gives you diversity and it gives choice, and it might offer new services. So those are really important opportunities for the end user. But actually, as a macroprudential regulator as well, we think there are benefits from diversity in the financial system. We've lived through a crisis where the system was concentrated, and we recognize that having different levers to pull on when one part of the system is impaired can really help. So actually, we see the challenges and innovators in the financial system as a real positive improvement. And we think that diversity can support resilience. And that's why we are trying to support the fintech innovation in the financial system, and why we think that cloud providers can provide an alternative opportunity, an alternative way of running systems, which could support the financial system. Having a series of different approaches can actually help resilience. So from a financial stability perspective, diversity is good and innovation is good. And we just need to be alive to both those sides, the innovation and the risk. Cool. So I think we are just about out of time. I hope you've enjoyed the discussion. We've certainly enjoyed answering your questions. I'm afraid we actually had a ton of questions which you didn't get around to, so we'll try and pick those up offline with the people who asked questions. Really value feedback, so do send us an email if you have anything you'd like to feedback on, and keep an eye on the website for further updates and have a look at the reports. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.